A man is the sum of his memories, you know. A Time Lord even more so. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Five Doctors, written by legendary Doctor Who writer Terence Dicks in his last TV script. He would write many more for books and straight-to-video films, which I don't think we're going to be tackling, or at least for the moment. I haven't decided yet. This would be his last Doctor Who script for the TV show, and is directed by Peter Moffat. So it brings back the team from the State of Decay to celebrate the 20th anniversary of our beloved sci-fi television program, as the fifth Doctor meets up with three other incarnations. Yeah, I know, the Five Doctors, but he only meets up with three. You're missing one there, Adam. Important to note as well is that there are actually two versions of this story. And what's really cool about this DVD is that they've each got their own disc. You've got the original Ed edition, and you've also got the special edition, which was I believe it was on VHS. They redid the effects. And this is, I believe, the first time both versions have been released side by side together. But anyway, the history of the airing of this story is actually kind of unique. It was first aired in America, of all places, to celebrate the actual day, as it was aired in America on the 23rd of November 1983. But in the UK, and I believe in most of the places, it actually aired during Children in Need. And if you watched it during Children in Need, you would have a little segment at the end of it where Terry Wogan would talk to Peter Davison in his in character as the Fifth Doctor, as he gives away his coat. You can find the clip on YouTube if you haven't seen it. It is I recommend it. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot to delve into here, and John Nathan Turner had built up season 20 as a season just full of references, just full of nods to the Doctor Who past. And I think with that, he gained a fan appreciation for him to tackle more fan-heavy material, which allowed him to really delve into the Five Doctors, as not only this would be the most the Doctor Who story with the most incarnations that take a prominent role, but it also has the most companions, as we get at least one companion from each era of the show, though some might double up for others. But yeah, and so it's also a one-part story, which is really interesting. No cliffhangers, no anything like that. It's just this standalone adventure, which is really, really strange, and it acts more like a movie than a TV episode. So that gives it a much more dynamic feel, making it a one longer episode. It's also one of the first stories to have its budget get increased by an outside source, as John Nathan Turner made a deal with the Australian Broadcast Association to fund the Five Doctors. So, and with the BBC's own budget, this story has a much tighter budget than your usual Doctor Who adventure. But anyway, I'm rattling on now, so let's just delve into the story at hand. As the first thing that we see is actually the Doctor introducing to the new console, as I don't know why he replaces it. I believe there's a Big Finish audio drama that explains it, because in Big Finish they had a series of Chameleon, a character that was introduced as a companion in the last story that we've tackled, The King's Demons, and they've done a series with him, and they explained why he wasn't in this story, and they also explained why the TARDIS console was changed. But either way, this would be now the console that would end the classic era of Doctor Who, and my god, I absolutely love it. It's just so much more stylish compared to the original, which it might be overboard in a bit, especially when you got the little red lines that lead up to the column. But personally, I really enjoy it, and it is my favourite controls of the classic series of Doctor Who. And it was actually put there by the Doctor, so the stylisedness of it actually makes sense in terms of the narrative. But anyway, so it turns out that the Doctor has actually taken Tegan and Turlough onto the Eye of Orion, the place where he said they would go in at the end of the King's Demons. And this bit I kind of find really funny, because it's made out in dialogue that this is the most tranquil place in the universe, and that loads of people just come here and they just feel really calm. And Tegan actually says, can we stay there for a while? And the Doctor's like, why not? But in the actual story, it just looks like a really muddy day in Wales. And I find that really hilarious. It just looks like a muddy field in Wales. And we as an audience don't get that tranquilist feel. We don't understand the Eye of Orion. Though the Doctor state it's something to do with the bombardments of ions or something like that, or particles or something. So it could be more of the feeling that you get there rather than the actual visuals that appear to you in this particular place. However, something happens as we actually get introduced to the first Doctor, now played by Richard Humdall, who had to be cast because William Hartnell sadly passed away a few years prior to this story. And so John Nathan Turner asked for Ian Levine for help onto trying to work out that. And his idea, and he saw Richard he's seen him in an episode of Blake Seven, but I could be wrong, and he's seen him there and he's like, he looks like William Hartnell enough, let's just cast him in as the first Doctor. Now, in my opinion, I can't really buy him being William Hartnell. He carries none of the mannerisms that Hartnell made his incarnation shine with. It feels very much Richard Heimdall either had no previous knowledge of how Hartnell played it, he wasn't shown any clips or anything, or he just really wanted to give his own stamp onto the role, as he comes off more as a I can't even really describe it, as a kind of wise old man who can get a bit tetchy sometimes. And I personally really like Richard Heimdall. In fact, he is one of my first Doctors. One of my first Doctors. Because I watched this when I was a kid during the VHS days before the new series came out. And I had never seen an episode of William Hartnell prior to this point. The story actually opens up with a clip from the Dalek invasion of Earth when he says goodbye to Susan. A heartbreaking speech. Here now retextualized to as the Doctor stating that he will meet up with everybody again. That's really cool that they got that little clip in there. And Richard Heimdall is a great performance, don't get me wrong. I really like him, and I personally wouldn't have it any other way. If you're looking for the first Doctor to appear in The Five Doctors, then you might be a bit disappointed, as it takes nothing from the William Hartnell performance. But anyway, he gets actually captured by a mysterious entity. And this is where the differences between the original and the special edition comes in. As in the original edition, it's like a strange semi-triangle that takes them. And in the special edition, it's like this ghostly cloth pyramid that captures everybody and takes their souls into the main thick of the plot. And personally, I prefer the special edition. The original has its own unique style, and I don't think it's I don't think the new version is superior in any way. But I decided for this marathon that I'd watch the special editions because the effects are just a little bit more tidier than the original, and I just personally prefer them. And this affects our Fifth Doctor as he feels that chunks of his past have been taken away. And it's strange to note that in this story, the Fifth Doctor doesn't get a lot to do. He's mainly one of several main characters. This would make it a huge departure to the previous anniversary story, The Three Doctors, in which despite the second Doctor being in that story and having a prominent role, it's really a third Doctor story. Here it feels a lot more like an ensemble cast, and I don't think that's particularly a bad thing. I believe the reason they've done this is because Peter Davison's Fifth Doctor is a bit more charming and relaxed, which allows for other people to shine out as well. And that's what I really like about Peter Davison's and why he put the Doctor a bit more innocent and a bit less eccentric than his predecessors. It allows for other people besides for him to shine, and it makes Doctor Who at this period in its history feel a lot more like an ensemble cast than the Doctor is the universe and everybody just needs the Doctor's help. Here, the Doctors that do have a prominent role do feel like they have prominent roles, as they don't even meet up really until the very end. But anyway, we also get the scene in which the Brigadier is getting ready for his reunion party, as he can't wait to meet old friends, and one of his friends actually bumps in. It also happens to be the second Doctor, played by none other than Patrick Troughton. God, I love this man. He is just so charming, and he has not lost an ounce of what makes his Doctor so charming. He's a little bit more grumpier, and that could be due with age, but I could easily close my eyes, listen to his voice, or just watch his mannerisms and easily be taken back to those black and white 60s era of the show. He really nails down what made his performance work. He even does the famous, "You've redecorated, I don't like it," line. And there's a great moment in which him and the Brigadier walk out, and the Doctor states that all these menacings that he's fought. Now, what's strange here is that one of the menaces he mentions is Omega, which doesn't make much sense in terms of continuity, because I believe I don't think it's been explained yet, but later on it would be explained that when two Doctors meet, the youngest incarnation forgets their encounter until this reaction happens, and then the Doctor remembers. So he shouldn't really remember Omega. Maybe he's already caught up in this time zone and is already interacting with the third Doctor's personality. Maybe that explains why he's a lot older in this story. Doesn't make much sense, but that's the way I've decided to see it as. That the time merging of this adventure is already happening, and that's how he remembers Omega. But anyway, the Doctor and the Brigadier, the second Doctor and the Brigadier, I should say, also get captured by this mysterious entity and gets taken to what seems to be a wasteland. And the Doctor gets another bit of cosmic angst, as the Doctor says, and the Fifth Doctor gets really weakened and Tegan and Turlough get the Doctor into the TARDIS, to which he sets the coordinates to set off to make sure he's fine, and then somehow the TARDIS lands in the wasteland also with everyone else. It's also here that we get to see the third Doctor in poor old Bessie also get captured in by this mysterious entity, as he states, "Great balls of fire." Jon Pertwee seems like he has aged out of the role a bit. He doesn't quite capture the same mannerisms as he did when he was in the show. His performance seems slightly altered a bit to fit a much more older Jon Pertwee. He's a lot more sweet and more innocent compared to the original, more authoritarical third Doctor. But it still really works, and it's always great to see Jon Pertwee in the role, and he gets some really great lines in this. One of my favourites is when he meets up with Anthony Ainley's master, who has returned, and he's like, this is my old best enemy. He likes to call himself the master, don't you? Like, really patronising. I love that bit. But anyway, like I said, the master gets involved as the Time Lords with President Brucer, and the Castellan and Flaira, I believe her name was. They reinsert the Master into Time Lord society and say that he could not only be pardoned, but he could also have a new regeneration cycle, which keeps into keeping with his dilemma in The Deadly Assassins and The Keeper of Traken, in which he is out of regenerations and he is currently travelling in a stolen body. And it's here that they give him a little mission to save the Doctor, as his other selves have been taken into a particular dark area of Gallifrey known only as the Death Zone, a place in which old Gallifreyans from history had taken weaker races and put them on this place to fight for the amusement of the Time Lords. And the Doctor somehow lands there, and each incarnation notices something is aboard as they see this tower of the Tower of Rassilon, his tomb, and they believe that it holds immense power and that it gets and the answer to all their problems and how to get out of here lies in the tomb. And so really the rest of the story, there's not much plot, it's just our characters meeting up and trying to get to the tower as they bump into various monsters from the past. The second Doctor and the Brigadier bump into Cybermen who later, after escaping the Cybermen, later encounter the Yeti with a great intelligence. Though I don't think they ever state it's a great intelligence, or that is any robotic technology. In fact, the Brigadier even mentions that it gets mad, and the second Doctor mentions it's hungry. So maybe this is an actual Yeti and not one of the Brigadier's, not one of the Great Intelligence's robots. The first Doctor enters a strange, bizarre room where he encounters Susan, played none other than Carol Ann Ford, reprising her role as Susan Foreman. Here, Susan, I just love Susan here, purely on performance. This is, in my opinion, Carol Ann Ford's one of her best performances, as she not only brings out Susan, but you kind of sense the elderness of her. She's a bit more older now, and she's a mature woman who helps her grandfather out. And it's also here where the first Doctor and Susan encounter a Dalek, a singular Dalek making its first appearance in the Fifth Doctor era, which is really strange because the Fifth Doctor never meets this Dalek, as the First Doctor and Susan destroy this Dalek by shoving it in a corner and letting an energy beam blast it and open a gateway into the rest of the Death Zone. The Third Doctor actually encounters Sarah Jane Smith. Now we also see her getting captured by this mysterious entity, but what's much more interesting in terms of continuity and fandom is that before she gets captured, her good old friend K9 warns her about dangers and that the Doctor's involved. Why is that interesting? Well, it basically establishes that K9 and company is canon, as in the actual show, it's you never see Sarah Jane and K9 up in the same story up until this point. And so K9 and company is canon whether we like it or not. And so the Third Doctor and Sarah go off travelling to the tower, which is also known as the Dark Tower. And it's here that they meet up with the Master, who basically explains that he's on a mission for the Time Lords. But the Doctor not believing him, because this is the Third Doctor. This is the one who fought Robert Delgato, the most evilest, one of the most evilest incarnations of the Master, and doesn't believe a word he says. And when the Master gives him the seal of Rassilon as a credential to prove that he is telling the truth, the Third Doctor actually keeps it. Now keep that in mind, because that will become very important when we tackle the 11th Doctor era. So yeah, keep that in mind, okay? For the rest of the marathon. The Doctor having the Master's seal of Rassilon. And the Master gets attacked by some bots and is forced to flee as the Third Doctor and Sarah travel again to the middle of the zone, and they also encounter Cybermen. Now this is also a great fan moment, because as many of you are aware, the Third Doctor never fought the Cybermen on screen. Sure, there might be some audio dramas where he fights the Cybermen, but this is the only real interaction with John Pertwee himself interacting with the Cybermen. Now, it's important to note that Terrance Dicks, despite being one of the best writers of the series and is described by many as the Stan Lee of Doctor Who, he really didn't like the Cybermen. And despite the Cybermen having quite a prominent role, they meet several incarnations, or at least they're in the same scenes as several incarnations, and they're basically used as like the stormtroopers of this story. They get their ass handed to them as the Doctor and Sarah Jane run away from the Cybermen and to the caves just before one of the caves to get up to the top of the tower. They meet a Rastan warrior robot, one of the only original monsters in this story who can seemingly teleport and base their sights on movement. And when the Doctor and Sarah Jane stay still, the Cybermen following them come up, and this thing just slaughters the Cybermen. Now, as a huge Cybermen fan, I would be very annoyed at this. But to have them in just an anniversary story, I'm just happy. And it's not like it was an easy kill. I mean, this threat is also big to the Doctor and Sarah. It's only until the Cybermen distract them that the Doctor and Sarah get to escape. So yeah, there's a lot going on in this plot. And the First Doctor and Susan actually find the TARDIS, and when they enter, they actually meet up with Tegan Turlough and the Fifth Doctor. And this is probably this is the first time in which the Doctor meets himself in this story. And I love the scene in which the First Doctor introduces Susan, even though it makes no sense because the Fifth Doctor knows who Susan is. But I like how Susan and the Fifth Doctor just can't keep their eyes off each other. There's a great fascination there. And you just see Peter Davison smiling at Carol Ann Ford and Carol Ann Ford smiling at Peter Davison. It's like they're like old family members finally reuniting, and it's just a small bit. And the first Doctor shows that he's more grumpy and he's much more bossy, as he asks Tegan to make a cup of coffee for everybody, a cup of tea for everybody, and Tegan's like, wait a minute, and the Doctor's like, please humour him, I was much more stubborn in my younger age, luckily one mellows with age. I love that line. And so the Fifth Doctor and the First Doctor have a bit of great banter around with each other. Though, like I said, the fact that it's not William Hartnell or anybody resembling William Hartnell kind of puts a strain on this story. And they decide to go into the Death Zone as the First Doctor pleads to stay in the TARDIS until the Fifth Doctor can release the barrier and send the TARDIS onto the Dark Tomb, the Tomb of Rassilon. And so the Doctor goes out looking, only to bump into the Master. And whilst he's talking to the Master, which is probably one of my favourite scenes, when they meet, you can kind of get the feeling that they're like old friends who have become bitter with each other. It starts off with the Master going, you might not believe this, Doctor, but for once I mean you no harm. And the Doctor, just like Alice, I always believe 3 impossible things before bedtime, before breakfast. And the Master basically explains what happens to him, and the Doctor and the Master then get captured by the Cybermen, only for the Master to get knocked out and the Doctor to use a teleporting device to take him to the capital of Gallifrey. So now I think this might be a good time to talk about Peter Moffat's directing. He oozes this story with atmosphere, from the really gothic-looking tower and the interior of the tower, from the much more elegant-looking Gallifrey. This would be a much more similar Gallifrey to the Arc of Infinity. However, here, Peter Moffat does a fantastic job at making the scenery look more elegant and much more like these almost godlike politician species would live in. It feels much more suitable for their era than it does in the Arc of Infinity, where the set kind of looks a bit cramped and a little bit off, I should say. And the scenery on location I believe they shot this in North Wales. Despite just looking like any other muddy hill high, it does do a fantastic job of bringing out this really almost cinematic gothic quality to this adventure. It reminds me a lot of The State of Decay, and that's a compliment. That is a huge compliment to this story. So Peter Moffat gets a great thumbs up in this story. But anyway, the Fifth Doctor discovers that the Master's not behind all this, and he's basically unravels a conspiracy that one of the Time Lords is doing this for various reasons. It's kind of revealed that it was Castellan, although Castellan denies this, as these black scrolls, will they say, were found in his room. And when he gets taken to the Mind Probe, which is probably one of the most unintentionally comedic scenes. It actually has become a sort of internet meme in which the Castellan is like, no, not the Mind Probe. But he gets killed off, and the Doctor doesn't believe it was him. And when he tries to give his suspicions to Barusa, he goes into his into his room, only to reveal that Barusa isn't there. And he finds a painting on a wall with a harp, and he believes that this has something to do with his disappearance. When he plays it, a door opens, a secret door opens to reveal the Castellan in dark robes, as it's revealed that he was the true villain. Now, this was a great shock for fans of the show back then, as Barusa has been a recurring character who's appeared in 3 other Doctor Who stories, that being The Deadly Assassin, The Invasion of Time, and The Arc of Infinity. And in all those roles, he's not only been a prominent role, but he's also been a loyal friend of the Doctor and has helped him on many occasions. Although it has been hinted that he's not particularly 100% on the Doctor's terms. So to have this twist that the Barusa was part of it was a genuine shock back then. And now it's just been occurred to me that I didn't talk about the 4th Doctor's role in this. Before filming was taken away, was airing, Tom Baker actually signed up to return to the role. However, just before filming took place, he decided he wasn't going to do this for various reasons. Maybe it had something to do with John Nathan Turner and him not getting along. Another reason, which is the reason he states on many occasions, is that he only just left the role. It's only been like a year or 2 since he left the role himself, and felt like him just turning back so soon might feel a bit odd and might be a bit unfair to Peter Davison. And in a way, I am kind of glad that he didn't come back in this story. I personally find that in a lot of cases with multi-Doctor stories, specifically with Big Finish, and they have Tom Baker in it, he has a reputation of kind of stealing the show, and there has been numerous occasions behind the scenes in which a great example would be the planned 40th anniversary, in which which was planned but was cancelled because many of the other Doctor Who actors didn't want to return because it seemed like Tom Baker was getting the entire spotlight. So in a way, I'm kind of glad he didn't get this spot in the role. You see him getting taken up by this scoop that Barusa's using. Here they use clips from Sharda, which at the time was not released, and they repurposed it for this adventure. However, they explain that he got stuck in the time vortex, and that this version of the Doctor has been stuck, and that's how they explain that he's not in the story. But what's really interesting about the 4th Doctor's role in this, in terms of what was planned, is that in the original script where the 4th Doctor was planned, it was actually the 4th Doctor that first discovers Barusa, and Barusa mind controls the 4th Doctor. Now, this would have made the 4th Doctor a semi-villain, and it does kind of feel like this role was made for the 4th Doctor, as Terence Dix puts it, the Tom Baker's Doctor, out of all these Doctors, seems the most likely to turn villainly. He's much more erratic than any other Doctor, so for him to turn into a semi-villain kind of made sense. But that's not what happens here. What happens here is that the 5th Doctor is possessed, and when the rest of the Doctors enter into the tower, to which we get great cameos from other supporting characters in the show, like Mike Yates, Liz Shaw, Zoe, and Jamie, as they appear as phantoms in the story. Although this becomes a big controversy in terms of canon, as the 2nd Doctor meets the phantoms of the Jamie and Zoe, but works out that they're not phantoms because their memories were wiped by the Time Lords. Now, how does the 2nd Doctor know this? Because according to the stories, television stories, the exact same adventure in which Jamie and Zoe get taken away by the Time Lords is also the same story in which the second Doctor regenerates. Literally like moments after, like maybe a minute or two in real time. So that becomes a big continuity error. Many fans have come up with the theory of season 6B, in which because we didn't actually see the Doctor regenerate, he actually had a secret series in which he had missions for the Time Lords. And this is actually backed up by comic books, as in the comic books, a very similar thing happens as the second Doctor gets trapped on Earth, and you actually see him regenerate for real in a comic book. And many stories after this adventure would go on to explain more in depth of season 6B, and there'd be another continuity error in the two Doctors, which we will be tackling on. But anyway, so all the Doctors lead up into the room of Rassilon, and they weaken the barrier. As the third Doctor puts it, he reversed the polarity of the neutron flow, so the TARDIS would be free of the force field, allowing the TARDIS to travel into the tower. And the three Doctors, the original three Doctors, all team up to try and work out a description written in Old High Gallifreyan, and they see the tomb, technically the dead body of Rassilon, and they discover that Rassilon might have had the power of immortality, and he wants to give it away to anybody who seeks him. And it's also here that Barusa comes in as the barrier is weakened, and he tells everybody to stand still as his power is weakened, and he tries to control the three other Doctors, but their mental minds combined frees the fifth Doctor, and the four of them go up against Barusa. However, Rassilon starts speaking as he commands Barusa to try and take his ring if he wants immortality, and he asks the Doctors, do you think he is ready for immortality? And 2, 3 and 5 say no, Barusa doesn't deserve immortality. No, but the first Doctor is like, yeah, don't listen to them. Barusa deserves immortality. And so Barusa takes the ring off Rassilon, and he gets imprisoned in his like coffin, the bottom of his deathbed, as he gets imprisoned. And the Doctors seem confused as the first Doctor explains that in part of the description it states that whoever wins, he who loses shall win, and he who wins shall lose, or something like that. And he kind of works out that immortality was a curse rather than a blessing, and Rassilon basically set us up to try and find out who wanted immortality and put them out of the way. And so the Doctor then gets all of his other selves to go into the TARDIS as they splinter off into various time zones, so they're retrieved back, and the fourth Doctor is returned to his own time. And the story ends with Felicia coming into the Dark Tower and tries to look for for Barusa, only to reveal that Barusa is technically dead at this point. And because Barusa and the Doctor were fighting for presidency, technically the Doctor is now president of Gallifrey. To refuse would be a great dishonour and would be exiled from Gallifrey. And the Doctor, playing up to this, is like, Felicia, you will go back and you have all the powers until I return. And the fifth Doctor goes back into the TARDIS and Tegan and Turlough, sorry. And Tegan's like, I guess this is goodbye then. It's like, I'm not going back, I'm going to keep travelling. And Tegan's like, what, you decided to run away from your own people? And the story ends with the fifth Doctor going, why not? After all, that's how it all started. referencing the Doctor's original exile back during the 60s. And that's the 5 Doctors. Overall, maybe in terms of pure writing, it kind of suffers. In terms of like pure pacing, and if you're looking at this as a pure analysing of structure, as there's not real much plot. The majority of the story is just each of our characters bumping into various history of Doctor Who before they get meets up into the tower, and it's only then that really plot becomes interesting. But as an anniversary story, this is one hell of adventure. You've got plenty of companions, you've got plenty of Doctors. To see them all banter around, to see all these villains returning, it basically feels like a kid who's mushing around all of his action figures. And if this was any other period of the show, if this was just your average adventure, it could be heavily criticised as just a really mindless adventure. But because it's an anniversary special, I think it does justify its being a colossal collage of Doctor Who history. And personally, it's just one big fun adventure. All our Doctors that get a prominent role feel like they have prominent role. Nobody outshines any of the other Doctors, as they each have a great importance in the story, although the 5th Doctor's importance really comes in halfway into the plot after the rest of the Doctors are introduced, as the majority of the first half is just him suffering from cosmic angst. But it's one of those stories you have to watch if you're a Doctor Who fan. I highly recommend it. And it's just a blast. It's just a great blast. I've skipped through a lot of it. I didn't even mention the chessboard on the floor scene with the Master and the Cybermen, and it's as easy as pie. And there's loads of stuff I haven't covered. So if you're interested in the story, go watch it. The 5 Doctors. Highly recommended from me. And that ends the 20th anniversary. I just realised it's the 25th anniversary. Oh no, 25th anniversary special is in the special edition. It's the 20th anniversary special. So join me next time where the Doctor, Tegan and Turlough bump into another of the Doctor's old enemies, as we will watch one of the most, I wouldn't say controversial stories, but it's very, has a very specific feel in terms of the fan base. So join me next time for The Warriors of the Deep. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!